For today's video, we're going to talk about attacks from the top position, specifically the side control. This is my absolute favorite position to attack from. I would much rather attack from here than any other position in Jiu-Jitsu. Hey, we were just wrestling and I beat you in this position.
I let him win.
You let me win. Yeah. He let the old man win. So when I'm in side control position, first thing I want to talk about is what we're going to do right when we establish side control. How are we going to react? And what position do we actually want to be in the side control position? So I like to take this hand and I like to put it on this side by his hip. I like to do that because my opponent is always going to like to regard me. And so by having this hand here, if he starts to regard, just kind of turn into me, buddy. So he's turning into me, my hand can kind of block these hips out a little bit. So I like to do that. With this hand here, I like to keep this hand on this side. Now my hands, how do I say this? My elbows don't go to the floor like this. If he scoots either way, if he scoots into me or away from me, just scoot away from me once. So if he shrimps out, my hand moves really easy. But if I put my palm on the ground, so my palm's on the ground, but my hand doesn't go flat, but just my palm, and then I put my elbow down, as he moves into me or away from me, I stick him a little bit better. It anchors me to the ground more. So I'm using my palm. You'll feel that when you train it. A really easy way to show that is, let's say my hand is here and my hand is flat. Shrimp out once, Leo. See how my hand moves? My whole arm moves? Okay, now go back. But if I had my palm on the ground and he tries to shrimp, it's harder for him to move. And it doesn't take me any strength. So that's one way we can anchor them to the ground, is by having our palms on the ground, but not our whole hand flat. Next thing is I'm going to have to decide if I'm going to lay on him and attack, or if I have to be mobile in the position. If I have to be mobile, it's because he's moving all over the place and I might have to get around him. So when I'm here, if he starts to really freak out and move, he's moving all over the place, I'll take my toes and I'll turn my toes out. And he starts to move. I'll take my toes and I'll turn my toes out like this, and I'll get off of my knees and I'll just get real mobile so I can move all over the place. Okay, ready? Start to move, Leo. Okay, so there you saw how I moved around. Now if I'm going to hold him in position, the last thing I want to do is hold him really tight, like a ball like this, because if I'm real tight like this, if he reaches over me, like say he just reaches like this, and I'm real tight, he could just roll me right over. So when I'm here like this, I have to distribute my weight so my center is right on his center. And what I did is I took my leg that's closest to his head and I brought it out, and I put my sternum right in the middle of his sternum, and my hands are making anchors. So my hands are anchored here by his hip, my hands are anchored here by his head. But I also have to be aware that he could throw me this way because of the way my leg is. So I really want to stay centered on him. Do I feel like I'm squishing you pretty good?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm squishing him. And once I'm really crushing him here, that's when I'm going to start to work the submission hold. Okay, now we have a lot of submission holds to train from here. First submission hold I'm going to look for is this arm, the far arm. I'm going to look for Americana shoulder lock. You saw this in the mount position, and we have a few options here. So first thing is, we talked about overloading the arm in our mount technique video. And in this position, I'm going to overload the arm, but instead of using my arms, I'm going to use my head. So when I'm here like this, it's going to be hard for me to talk you through this because my head's going to be buried down, but let me just show you. Let's say you're defending that a little bit. Kind of put it by your head, you know. Look what I do. Head. And then when I put my head on his arm, I drive off my toes and drive his arm to the ground. Now once I've driven his arm to the ground, I've got all 5 fingers on the outside of his wrist. I'm here like this, and I make my basic Americana shoulder lock. But sometimes my opponent straightens their arm. If they straighten their arm, I move here to apply a straight arm bar. So now I'm arm barring him straight. If he now tries to get his belt, try to get your belt, I'll stop it. Now look at it. I've anchored my hand, and I walk my hand up a little bit to try to prevent that. So he's having a hard time reaching his belt right now. I'm going to tell you what, if he does get his belt, it's not the end of the world. I'm still going to beat him. But we're just going to pretend he didn't, all right? So we're going to pretend he didn't. I'll talk about it next, what happens when he gets it. Now I switch my hands, so this arm goes under. My head stays in control here. This arm goes over, and I keep his arm bent. And now I have the Kimura lock. For the Kimura lock here, I'm gonna bring my leg over his head. By bringing my leg over his head and walking my other leg back, it makes it really hard for him to escape this position. Now, let me bend your arm a little bit, buddy. Kimura lock right there, it's a painful position. And if he straightens his arm to try to escape, I'm back to a straight elbow lock. And now if he turns his arm again, can you turn it towards your head? I keep this walking here, I switch, head control, and I go back for the Americana. So those are our first 3 attacks on this opposite side arm. Now this next technique is going to be the paper cutter choke. And I'm going to show 2 ways to do this choke. One way is going to be the way that's one way is going to be what I think is good for a white belt level, and the other way is going to be how a black belt would catch this technique, just to give you guys a good tip. So from here, the paper cutter choke, my arms here like this, I keep my elbow attached to my hip, and I bring my thumb in just like that. I'm going to have small arms on this one, so I don't want to make a big exaggerated grip, because when I do this, he sees that and he blocks it. Just go ahead and block it. It'll be instinct, he'll block it. But instead, I keep this real like this, and I just slide my thumb inside, real quick like. Then my other hand, and I'm just going to sit up so you guys can see, my other hand goes underneath his arm and catches whatever I can get back here, chunk of the gi, the lapel back here, and then this comes here, and I bring that down, and as I bring that down, my leg that's closest to his head is going to scoot out, and I'm going to drop all my weight on him, and that's the basic paper cutter choke. You ready? Here we go. Making the grip. Here, my leg goes back, paper cutter choke. Now that's the first way I learned it, and I've tapped a lot of people out with that. But now I'm going to show you guys a black belt level trick. This one here, I'm going to move to a north and south position in hopes of him taking this arm and reaching around my body. And there's a way that I can kind of make them do that by kind of just leaning on their head. So I walk around, I lean on the head, and I see if his arm, here it is, his arm just went around, see? There's his arm right there. Now my hand goes underneath and I catch this part of the lapel back here, behind him, just like that, just like we did before, but now his arm is trapped. Now that his arm is trapped, I take my weight and I transfer my weight to this side, thumb here, reach, and then I transfer my weight back to make the choke. Let's see that in all one motion. And that's the advanced paper cutter choke. From here, my opponent makes the mistake of reaching his arm up around me like this. Now, why is he doing this? He's doing this because he feels like he can grab a hold of me and throw me one way or the other. It is important here that I don't keep real tight on him because he could throw me if I stay tight on him. So I'm gonna stay open and keep my pressure and my weight on him and distribute my weight. But he has the arm around me. Once he has his arm around me, I am now gonna take this side, and I wanna mention that this is the side closest to his head. Okay, we're gonna do the other side in a second, but it's closest to his head. I now take this arm and I catch my own gi. I catch my own shoulder. I grab something over here. Okay, now that I have this, I walk around him and I turn him up to his side. Now, there is a 180 arm bar that I'm gonna fall back to. But before that happens, oftentimes they realize they're in trouble and they reach for their belt. Go ahead, Leo. Good. Okay, go back. Jiu-jitsu is very important to think a couple steps ahead. And so I realize he might be trying that. So because I know he might be trying that, I put my hand here and I wait for a second. Reach for your belt. And he falls right into my hand and right into the Kimura trap. Now I grab my wrist and I make the Kimura lock behind him. I like to finish this move by driving my elbow to the ground, walking my leg out, and then making the move. But I've seen many people just lock it right here as well. So again, he's reached here. I trap first, pinch my head here so he can't get out so easy, step over his head, and wait for a second. If he reaches for his belt, boom. That's my easier move. So I'm gonna wait a second to see if he reaches for it. If he doesn't reach for it, I'm gonna turn towards you guys for a 180 arm bar. So I just keep the rotation going and fall back for the arm bar. Now my opponent is taking his hand, and instead of reaching this side, he's reaching to this side. So now he's here, okay? Okay, no problem. He's reaching here because he thinks he can grab a hold of me and throw me. But this is a big mistake. This is not how to escape side control. So I'm gonna take advantage of his mistake. I'm gonna catch his arm, pinch here, grab my own gi or my shoulder, or grab anything I can. Okay, now he can't escape this arm, so now I own this arm. Now, from here, I'm just gonna turn him on his side a little bit, and I'm gonna step over him like this, okay? Now, this is kind of older guy jiu-jitsu, you gotta remember. Sometimes, especially a younger guy, a very athletic person could jump up to knee on stomach on this, which is a position coming up, and you could do these same techniques from knee on stomach. So you'll see those in a minute. But for me, rather than going to the knee on stomach, I'm just gonna pull him towards me. Now from here, I'm just gonna do the arm crunch arm bar. I pinch, I catch. Now my hand is on my shoulder. My elbow is on top of his elbow. There's a space between us. It might be hard to see from the video angle, but I'm not here where there's no space at all, but I'm rounded my back a little bit and then created a space. There's a gap between my body and his arm. I squeeze this, and I lock the arm in that gap. And that's the arm crunch arm bar. You can still turn to a 180 arm bar. I could fall forward and I could submit him. I could fall backwards. There's plenty of times I've lost my balance on this. I fall backwards, still submit him right here, just like that, okay? So, the moral of the story is, I can attack this arm in many different positions. But my last technique I'm gonna do, my last attack, is gonna be a really good setup to catch that Kimura lock. And in my opinion, out of all these moves, the Kimura lock is probably the strongest one. It works really good for no-gi, works great in MMA, it works great in jiu-jitsu, and it's a very strong, hard technique to get out of. So we're gonna show a really cool trick to catching that. Well, I'm gonna turn my body and I'm gonna start looking for the mounted position. Now in this curriculum, in this level, you probably should know how to take the mount. You should at least know a basic way to take the mount from here. One thing I wanna do is his arm is active back there. You can't see it, but trust me, he has an arm back there and it's active. He could grab my belt or my waist, and if he times it just right, like if he doesn't understand the timing and he just tries to throw me, just try to throw me over, just try to throw. It's hard because my foot here is basing. I'm basing with that foot. It's hard for him to throw me. But if he waits, if he has patience and he waits, right when I'm about to touch my foot to the ground, right as that toe touches, I don't have any base and he could throw me right over.
You want me to throw you?
Yeah, let's try it. Ready? Okay, I scoop my hip. I don't know if you guys can see his hand, but his hand, here's his hand right here. Okay, he's grabbing my belt. If he tries to throw me, here, bring your legs down. I know you normally wouldn't have your legs down, but if he tries to throw me, you know, it's hard to throw me with your legs down, but yeah, do it like that. See, my base is here. So I have base with that leg. But if he's patient and he waits for the right timing, right when I touch the floor, right as my toes are touching the floor, I won't have time to bring my leg back and he can sweep. Go ahead, go, ready, roll. So my answer to this is I'm gonna take my hip and I'm gonna move it back, completely immobilizing his arm. Your arm's squished now, right?
Yes.
So his arm is squished. I've completely immobilized his arm. Now if I want to take the mount position, I'm not gonna go knee toe, but I'm gonna lift my leg up over anything blocking here. I'm gonna put my foot flat, okay? There. Then I come to the mounted position. Say he has his legs up to block. He's just doing this kind of stuff. Bring this leg here. You get to get this a lot. That happens a lot, right? I might be able to, if I'm athletic, if I have long legs, I might be able to lift up and come over. We'll see, maybe, right? Oh, I couldn't make it. Some of you guys will be able to make it, but I couldn't make it. So now I'm gonna grab his foot, pull his foot back. He's like, man, what's this guy doing to my foot? He's trying to foot lock me. His natural reaction is to resist. And so when he resists, go ahead and push your foot, push, resist. Look at what happens. And look at what, boom, I come right to the top, okay? Sometimes they bring that leg up. If you move your hip back enough, you can grab your own foot and you can get real sneaky. Did you even feel that, Leo? Sneaky ninja mount right there. But I'll tell you this, the person on the bottom, if he knows a little jiu-jitsu, He knows I'm trying to take the mount. If his legs are up, he knows I'm trying to take the mount. He knows I'm looking for that mounted position from here. So this is what's going to give me the Kimura lock. So I'm going to take my arm here, and I'm going to bring my arm to here. So it was back by his head. I'm going to move it up by his forearm. Now when I take the mount position, a lot of times they'll take this hand and they'll push. Bring your leg down for a second. It would work with that leg up, but like push my knee with your hand. See, they do this all the time, right? So he's blocking it, right? It's a natural reaction. He doesn't want me to mount him. So I'm here, arm here. I'm not going to be sneaky with the mount. I'm going to make him feel that I'm mounted. I'm going to run into him on purpose. Then I grab his wrist and my own wrist at the same time, and I transfer all my weight back towards him, and I make the Kimura lock, or the straight arm bar, or I could even move to a wrist lock, if you want to be real mean. So we're here. I run into him, he blocks. If my arm's back here the way it is, it's a long, I gotta grab his wrist, it's way too much motion. So when I know I'm gonna do the trap, I come up higher on his arm. Come here, I run into him, he blocks, catch my wrist in his wrist, move myself back, and make the Kimura lock. All right, those are my favorite attacks from the side control position.